Awesome. Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being a part of our event today. Today, Hervolution has partnered with the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers, who are putting on National Engineering Month, and we're very excited to be hosting our event, Engineering the Future. Okay. So there might be a couple technical difficulties on my end. Oh, there we go. I figured out how to hit the next slide. Awesome. So thank you, everyone, for attending today. My name is Nihat Haptit. I will be your moderator on behalf of Hervolution. I studied chemical engineering at the University of Toronto, and I just wanted to put this event together to really encourage our students and those who are part of Hervolution to maybe understand a little bit more of what engineering is, what we do, and encourage you guys to pursue any sort of STEM or engineering related careers. So I want to start off with our land acknowledgement today. So Hervolution acknowledges that we are coming to you from Toronto, which is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. We respectfully acknowledge the past and present traditional stewards of the land and their unique role in the life of the region. Toronto is on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and play in this territory. Awesome. So a couple of housekeeping items before we get into the meat of our event today. Feel free to turn your cameras on, and this is supposed to be a really interactive sort of event. We're going to have 4 panelist speakers who I'm going to introduce to you guys shortly, but I do ask that you keep your microphones on mute until the Q&A session. I will be saving about 10 minutes at the end of our presentation today for any questions that you guys may have. So feel free to throw them in the chat box or email Hervolution as well. I will be following up with any questions that we don't have a chance to get around to today, but I'm really hoping we can get to all of your questions in today's event. Okie dokie. So a little bit about Hervolution. For the past 11 or so years, Hervolution has been creating a safe space for young girls and gender nonconforming youth to develop and really hone in their leadership skills and explore STEM-related careers, engineering included, connecting them with industry leaders and experienced professionals for support, guidance, and advice in their careers. That's always very helpful when you're trying to find, I guess, representation of what you look like and who you are in industry, and we'll try our best to connect you with those professionals. So we hold several programs outside of National Engineering Month, such as GoSTEM, Stemming Up, Ambassador Program, and the Youth Committee. If you guys are interested, there'll be a QR code at the very end so that you can access, apply, and support these programs as well. So what is engineering? A lot of people always ask me, what do you do? Even my own family and friends will ask me, what do you do at work all day? And at a very high level, engineering is very vague, but it's just the application of scientific principles to solve everyday real life problems. A lot of engineers work in many different sectors, whether it's automotive, technology, banking, manufacturing, the healthcare space, AI. So there's an abundant opportunities for engineers or young students who are pursuing engineering, but mainly we deal with system design and improvement with humans centered at the focus of these problems. So how do we interact with our environments, different products, technology, and whatever have you? But at the end of the day, we're really dealing with innovative change and increasing proficiency and efficiencies within these systems. So engineering is really what you want to make out of it. You'll see on the panel, a lot of us have studied a wide variety of engineering, and we've kind of made our careers what we wanted of it. So I'm going to introduce our panelists today. We have with us today Waika Muriel, who studied materials engineering in her undergraduate degree at the University of Toronto and also pursued her master's at McMaster University. We have Sophie Tequesta, who studied biomedical engineering at Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly known as Ryerson. We'll have as well joining us Peggy Lynn, who is from one of our sponsors working with General Motors, studied chemicals and material engineering, And last but not least, we have Danielle Durango, who studied materials engineering at McMaster University, and she as well working with one of our sponsors, 30 Forensics Engineering. So all of our panelists, if you want to jump on in and introduce yourselves really quickly, I'll give you guys a minute to introduce yourselves, and then we'll jump into our first questions.
Okay, since I'm the first one on there, I'll introduce myself first. So good afternoon. My name is Malika, as Niet has said, and I graduated from U of T. So currently I work in software testing. We have our major client is Bell Canada. So on a day-to-day basis, I work with their business in telecommunications to ensure that they have user-ready software products and applications that their technicians and on-site agents can use. And as Niet mentioned as well, I am currently enrolled in a master's program at McMaster for engineering design. And recently I've been really into systems and hardware engineering. So I look forward to delving more into that and see where that takes me in my career. So thank you very much for having me today.
I'll go next. So hi everybody, nice to meet you all. So as Nate said, I studied biomedical engineering and I currently work at Virtual Health. So I'm in the healthcare world. And what I do is essentially help clients to integrate all of their data onto our platform for care management. So I'll just usually help clients, transform their data. Some of my job involves actually coding. Some of it involves doing some architecture work just to make sure we can get the systems talking to each other and performing efficiently, and also just making requests and suggestions to make our products better for our clients. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, hi everyone. My name is Danielle. I'm really happy to be here this afternoon to kind of talk to you all about engineering. So as already mentioned, I work at 30 Forensic Engineering. My background is in materials engineering. I have an undergraduate in materials engineering and also a master's, both from McMaster University. And my role is it's like being an engineering detective. So I deal a lot with product failures and other things that have failed and kind of do the reverse engineering to figure out why these failures have happened. So many people, as my other two panelists, they design more systems. I kind of do the opposite in figuring out why these things were maybe possibly designed wrong and ways that they could potentially be improved.
Awesome. Thank you guys for introducing yourselves. I guess I'll give you guys a bit of what I do as well. I'm technically a consultant. I work with designing automated solutions. So when you guys think of your typical Amazon warehouse, how does the product get from some warehouse in the middle of nowhere to your front doorstep in 24 hours? So we design automated material handling solution systems. So I'll work with several different clients, whether it be Amazon or whatever have you, and work with them to develop their internal system so that you can get your products delivered to your front door, or even getting through airport security or just any sort of automated system that gets you from point A to point B is what I would focus on with different clients all over the world, actually. So first, we're going to start off with an icebreaker question for our panelists here. If you guys had one superpower, what would it be and why? I'll start off. I'll give you guys a soft launch of my personal favorite superhero. I love the Hulk. I love how he harnesses just science and pure strength and kind of combines them into two as he battles his internal conflict. So if I could be any sort of superhero or superpower, I would be the Hulk. So that'll give you guys an idea of my personality, and I'll hand it over to our panelists. Danielle, do you want to start us off?
The first thing that comes to mind as a superpower would be like the power of healing. I just thinking of little things like you get a paper cut and how it's annoying when you're trying to wash your hands or put hand sanitizer on. It's like just to be able to heal that right away would be really nice, and just being able to like take away others' pain. I mean, I don't know. That's what I first think about. Is healing. But then if if that doesn't really count as a superpower, I think the other one would be flight, because it'd be really cool to just, I don't know, soar up above and not have to be in an airplane. I don't know. That's
avoiding that airport traffic would be
exactly. I mean, as much as you probably design good solutions for airports, if I can avoid them, potentially with the power of flight, I don't know, it'd be pretty cool.
I'm with you there. Sophie, did you want to share with us your superpower as well?
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous I didn't think of healing first because that's a great one. Um, but I would teleport for sure. Like I would see the snow outside and then instantly teleport somewhere tropical for the weekend.
I definitely think that would come in handy, especially this weekend with the weather that we've had. So I'm with you there. Waika, did you have a superhero that you want or a power that you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, this one was tough. I had to think about it a little bit, but I think in a practical sense, I probably want to manipulate time in that it slows down for me so I can get a bunch of things done, but it's like normal time for everybody else. So that kind of just optimizes the things that I have to do. And like, I always find that there's so many things I want to do that I don't get to. So I think that would just be helpful in day-to-day life.
I think that's the perfect like transition engineering superhero power to transition us into our Q&A. I think all engineers have the struggle of balancing their time and priorities. So it's very fitting of you. I'll say that. Okay, so my first question would be, what inspired you guys to kind of get into engineering? How did you see yourself in the engineering space? And what made you, I guess, go for it when you were pursuing your undergraduate degrees? Micah, you were the last to answer, so I guess I'll put you on the spot now.
Sure. So I always I grew up always wanting to be a doctor, and then I took this I think it was like engineering or coding class in high school, where we made like these really like beta prototype applications, and that's when I asked the teacher at my high school like, what do I need to do to get into engineering? And from there, that kind of ignited that career path for me. I was still trying to, I guess, find a compromise between, okay, like I wanted to be a doctor, so maybe I could do more biology, and then it somehow transformed into, okay, I'll do materials engineering. And for a while, I honestly was really unsure about what path to take, and I was concerned that I'm like, oh my god, I finished this degree, and what is it that I can and use from it to apply to the next thing? Hence why I decided to do a master's in engineering design, and then I fell back into the software, to the hardware, which I really enjoy now. So it's kind of been full circle. It's taken me, I don't know, since 2013 to kind of from that first coding class up till now to realize, okay, like I really did want to um, go into this kind of engineering. And what really drove me at the beginning was pure curiosity and interest. I was like, this is really cool. It's not something I was really exposed to growing up since my parents were in healthcare. And I think it's fascinating. And apart from that, there's always a part of me that just wants to improve people's quality of life. So that probably was the main thing that I was like, okay, I have to finish my engineering degree. I really want to somehow make people's lives better.
That's beautiful. I do have a follow-up question that I'm sure many of our students are very curious about. I think in our brains, we can all visualize what a traditional civil engineer does. They build buildings, it's very clear. We know what a computer engineer does. They do something with software and hardware, very clear. Electrical engineering, we see all the wiring, light bulbs, we can visualize it. What does a materials engineer, I guess, focus on or study during their time in school?
I'll quickly go into it. Maybe Danielle can also pitch in, but from what I can remember, we study very in terms of granularity. We're at very fine granularity of what we study. So in terms of material, it's their properties, so strength, pressure, time, like anything that kind of changes it and molds it. Um, yeah, that's a good question. I feel like Danielle would have more to say. Um
I think it's a
mostly remember phase diagrams.
I can jump in, Weka,
Yeah.
and kind of give my 2 cents on it. Because again, that was a question I got a lot when I was in school, especially from, well-meaning family and friends are like, what is materials engineering? Like, what are you studying? I know what chemical engineering is. I know what civil engineering is. I know what mechanical engineering is. We know, computer engineering, but what is materials? And I like to say, like, materials engineering, we study materials, which sounds pretty basic, but everything is made up of something. We've got metals, which was a large part of my particular education, but we have ceramic materials, we have plastic materials, we have composite materials, which is just a mixture of multiple materials in one. And we kind of study them on a atomic level. So like what actually goes into the building blocks of these materials, how are they made, what is their structure like? And then also the application, it's like, what would you use, if you had to have a really hard material, but it's in a tension application versus compression versus, is this going to be a really high temperature or at a really low temperature? And then kind of from there, what is the best materials to use for that particular application? So it's a lot of the material properties about what actually makes something. And then that can kind of take you into a wide variety of careers. It could be actually manufacturing these materials. Many people that work with powdered materials that are sintered at high temperatures, or they work in creating new plastic materials, or they work in a steel plant and actually making the material. Or it could be on the opposite end of, it's like somebody that works in cars. It's like, what material would you use for the doors versus the steering wheel versus like the engine? Because they're all made of something different. So it's kind of a wide variety
So from
of
hearing,
things.
oh, sorry to cut you off, Danielle, but what I'm
No.
hearing, there seems to be a lot of like intricate product design. There can be a lot of product research as well into making different things. But how does that align with our high school students today? What course, I guess, transitions them into materials engineering? Would it be chemistry? Would it be a bit of chemistry mixed with a bit of physics and biology? Like how does that translate into the high school experience to the
For
university?
sure. That's a great question. For me, I really liked chemistry in high school, and that very much aligns with materials engineering. I find materials engineering and chemical engineering similar in some ways, where there is focus on the chemistry. But I found materials engineering focused more on solid materials, and then chemical engineering focused more on different processes and also maybe things that are more liquid or fluids. Materials, but it's definitely chemistry mixed with the physics. So you have the chemistry of what exactly is the material. You have, those chemical equations that make up the material, but then you have the physics of, well, what are the properties of this material?
Awesome.
Kind of mixed together.
Okay, I think that kind of aligns chemical engineering, which is what I studied, materials, which is what you and Waika studied. But Sophie, I'm curious how these sciences kind of interact with biomedical engineering. Can you explain to us a little bit how biomedical engineering kind of enters the engineering space?
Yeah, it was actually interesting to listen to materials because I had the same questions of what is it? Do you guys study? I've always been curious. But biomedical is actually a hybrid of a few different engineering disciplines. So it was a mix of electrical, computer, and mechanical. And we would use these three disciplines to apply to anything you could think of in the medical space. So whether that was building tools and systems that you think of like ECGs and EMGs, or it was a lot of medical imaging. So you could write computer programs or algorithms in order to make or process these images better. So when you think of like CAT scans and MRIs, things like that. And it can also be taken all the way into different algorithms that we use are actually that you don't see or you might not think of, but anything to do with the digital world in healthcare. So that's primarily what I work in. There's apps now and there's electronic healthcare data that people are working with. So it's not just files that they have in the doctor's systems, right? Everything is being transformed to keep all of the data online and make it easier for sharing, and even apps for us to access so we can get access to our own healthcare data. So anything you can think of in the healthcare space is what biomedical engineering covers. So it's really wide, and you can find your own specialty within that, whether you prefer more of the computer programming side of it, or if you like, the electrical side of things, then you can probably work in building like EMG systems, things like that.
Okay. I just wanted to point out one thing. I find it very interesting that both Sophie and Waika were interested in the healthcare space, but took two different approaches at two different or three different universities, really. They work at two completely different places, but their interests and passions, I guess, stemmed from the same source, which is a passion for healthcare, a passion for trying to help people along the way. And I find it very interesting. I think that that's really the definition of engineering. You can find yourself in a bunch of different places and you make your career what you want of it. Very flexible, and a lot of different paths that you can take. You can pivot from, I guess, more software side of things in the biomedical health space, which is what Sophie does, to more like analysis and maybe research guided work, more aligned with what Wicca does. So I guess we're going to pivot a little bit because I do want the students to kind of envision themselves in the positions that you all found yourselves in. A lot of you picked different universities, from the University of Toronto's engineering, McMaster, Ryerson, I mean, even the Royal Military College of Canada. So I just wanted to ask, maybe I'll start with Peggy. I know Peggy's joined us now. Why did you decide to study engineering at the University of Toronto or even the Royal Military College of Canada? What were your decision, I guess, factors when you were deciding out of high school?
For Toronto, it was close to my family. That was really important to me to stick around town. I thought about going to McMaster. I got in at both places, so I ended up choosing Toronto. And then I left town because I really wanted to explore the defense side of the industry. So I was going to join the military. My eyesight didn't quite meet the requirements, so I ended up just doing a master's with them, and I took it from there. And now I've crossed a couple of different disciplines, and I'm really enjoying myself.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Danielle, I see that you. Oh, sorry. Oh, someone on mute because I can. Or can someone mute them? Okay. I think it's hearing a lot of feedback. Panelists. Themselves? Okay, that's better. Thank you, Peggy. What I was going to ask was, Danielle, I see that you actually went to McMaster. Can you give us, I guess, some understanding of why you chose that university?
I mean, there's always a couple different factors. Same thing a bit with Peggy, is I did want to stick closer to family. But what I really liked about McMaster, and I believe U of T has this as well, but correct me if I'm wrong, ladies who went there, uh, that there was a general first year program. So I didn't have to pick a discipline right after high school. So I was able to go to different information sessions, talk to upper year students about what exactly they did in their courses, because I thought I was going to be a chemical engineer. And I figured out what materials engineering was. And I was like, this aligns more with my interests and what I like. So I was able to study that, but I didn't know what materials engineering was in high school. So I was very grateful for that general first year, which allowed me to, get all the core math and science courses done. But then they had kind of like a materials 101 introduction to materials course that everyone had to take, but to get your feet wet in that area, which I hadn't experienced before. So that was one of my deciding factors.
Yeah, I think
and then of course I got into the university. I think that's also a big question, is you apply, to many different universities, and sometimes you have the grades for one, sometimes not necessarily for the other one. So there was that too.
Yeah, I will just add, while a lot of engineering programs, whether it be U of T, McMaster, TMU, even York University, we have a great bunch of universities in Southern Ontario. And I know that a lot of the admission requirements are very rigorous, quite high. It is competitive, but they do look at the holistic application. So maybe you volunteer with Hervolution in your free time. Maybe you're part of your, varsity soccer team. So they do look at the holistic self, but yeah, of course, very competitive program to get into engineering. Waika, did you want to shed some light as to the University of Toronto's general track 1 program in first year as well? We have a very similar program.
Yes, okay, sure. So fun fact for everyone attending too. So Niet and I were actually, we were at U of T at the same time for engineering. So it was really funny because we knew each other in childhood, and then we got to university and chemical and materials, they're in the same building and everything. So just as a fun kind of anecdotes. But for the track 1 program, so that's the general engineering program that is for the first years entering U of T engineering. And they also take a variety of courses. At the end of the year, I think that you get to rank your preferences to see which fields you go into. From what I know, I think track 1 is a touch more competitive in terms of grades getting into it, but the folks and the classmates that Niet and I have met coming out of track 1, they did get a better sense of, okay, like this is cool, this is what I want to do. They hold seminars throughout the year as well from the different disciplines so that you get that exposure, which is great. For someone like me who was kind of in between, should I stay in healthcare or bio versus engineering, I thought, looking back, that would have been a cool program to do. So a general gist of what track 1 is, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think all of us maybe can relate to this sentiment of you're 18, 17 years old, graduating high school, you apply to university, you have a very strong vindication, or I don't know what the right word is, but you have a very strong sense of, I'm going to do this type of engineering and this is going to be it for me. But then when you graduate, you have a very different idea of, maybe I didn't actually align very well with that. Actually, I want to work in this different space. So I think one of the benefits of a general first year is definitely getting a better idea of, what is this type of engineering? What am I going to be studying? Because sometimes what you study in engineering and where you actually end up work-wise post-graduation is a little bit different. So those general first years are quite helpful if you're kind of iffy about what discipline. But of course, if you're very confident in the discipline that you have selected for engineering, you can't go wrong. They're very flexible in the sense of what jobs you can get after you graduate. And I'm sure most programs are flexible where you can perhaps transition in and out. So you'll always find yourself in a good position, but just to keep you guys aware of the general first year option, a great option for those of you interested in STEM and engineering, but not quite sure of where you want to end up. Awesome. So that kind of leads me into a different segment of questions. We're all women on this panel, and Hervolution, of course, is an organization that focuses on nurturing and encouraging young women and gender nonconforming youth to enter fields that aren't traditionally or female dominated. So have you guys faced any sort of like obstacles, or maybe you didn't see yourselves in the jobs that you have now, but have you faced any obstacles from the female perspective? And how have you addressed those challenges? Sophie, if you wanted to perhaps shed some light on your experience as a female engineer, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it's been really challenging because growing up, I didn't have any engineers in my family, and I didn't know of any specifically women engineers. And when I got into Ryerson, most of the times in my classes, I was probably like one of four women in that class. So we were definitely the minority in that group, and it would help to at least see somebody that you can relate to coming in your background, doing something that you're interested in doing. And so I wish I would have had more of that. So that's why I think programs like this are really great. But yeah, it's something that I think you tend to get used to. I think there's a little bit of feedback, but I think in my profession and in my career, I still see the same thing. And you just have to learn to build a lot of confidence in yourself because you know that there are a lot of preconceived notions about how women are in the workforce. And you just have to build sort of a tough skin and block out all the noise and be true to yourself and trust in your work to speak for itself.
Yeah. Did any of the other panelists want to add on as well? I can, I guess, speak to my experience. Can
you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, for me, definitely, I don't always present as conforming. I identify as female, and my wife and I have a son. So in working in a fairly traditional defense male-dominated environment, wasn't always easy. There were a lot of questions around the pregnancy process, and just awkward questions that you wouldn't normally get asked. Things like it's just incredible. And then not strictly related to my identity in terms of gender, but rather as a LGBTQ engineer. I've had to take something to HR, and it was fairly close to going to the human rights tribunal. But all of that, I think it just goes to show that there are ups and downs. There are people who will not necessarily align with your thinking, but don't forget that there are also lots of people who are, and they may or may not be able to speak up for whatever reason for you, and you might be their light. So don't be afraid to, and I fully agree with what Sophie said, you have to be true to yourself, and the confidence will come, even if sometimes it feels like you're by yourself. You're not.
Yeah. I think the confidence, I think the confidence comes oftentimes from experience and having a sponsor in the workplace. But most importantly, that self-confidence. And that really comes with time. It takes time to develop, it takes time to nurture. You obviously have to have tough skin, but I think there are many women and other gender non-conforming individuals who have come before us, who have done a lot of work, and us now on the panel and myself as the moderator have a long way to go. So events like this are really great to connect like individuals with professionals in the field and make you feel like there's someone who looks like you, there's someone who talks like you, there's someone who comes from a similar background as you. You may not necessarily see it in your immediate environment or ecosystem wherever you live or go to school, but there are quite a network of individuals. So for example, Waika mentioned that her and I went to school together. So just from that connection, I was able to introduce her to you guys today. So we all pay it forward, we all connect one another and advocate for one another as well. So we have a long way to go, but I think we're definitely making progress. I believe when Waika and I had entered U of T, the percentage rates of entrance between male and female students was about 43% women, 60-ish% male. Forgive me if my numbers aren't 100% accurate. So I know that every year it's getting better and better. And if you're interested, you put your first foot forward, the second foot will follow, and you'll encourage other people along the way as well. So I just don't want anyone to be discouraged if they hear negative stories. Obviously it's going to happen, but it's an uphill battle and we're all in it together. Awesome. So let's pivot a little bit more. I wanted to ask what a typical workday would look like for an engineer. This is something I get asked by a lot of my friends and family who are very stunned and shocked to see what I'm doing on my computer typing away all day. So I guess I'll start with Danielle. What does a typical workday look like you from clock in to clock out?
I guess it depends on the type of day that I'm having. So I say that my time is divided mostly three ways in my um, particular field. So the first thing is that I do site inspection. So when things break, on the material side of things, a lot of my things are product failures or things that um, like household things a lot of the time. Sometimes I get bigger project, but let's say that you have like a pipe burst inside your house. And that would be something that'd be like, well, why did this burst? And I would reverse engineer to figure out, okay, well, it burst because it was poorly manufactured or was incorrectly installed. So I go on site, and by site, I could be going to people's homes, I could be going to a warehouse, I could be going to like a manufacturing facility. So that's part of my day. So traveling kind of within the Greater Toronto area for that. I did actually get to go to Vancouver once for work, so we do travel across the country. So that's part of my day. The other part of it is actually looking at the things that have broken during time at our lab facility. So we have a laboratory with a microscope, which usually gets everything that we need done. And then the third part of my day is the not as exciting part, is the actual disseminating the information to our clients. So I'm either calling people on the phone and telling them, hey, your pipe broke because of this, or I'm writing them an email, or I'm writing them a report. So I say it's the less fun part because I've already done the cool part and the problem solving of figuring out what happened. And then I actually, I have to explain it. And I think that's a really valuable skill that I've learned in my career, is being able to explain the really scientific things to somebody who may not have a science background. So part of my day depends, you may find me writing a report on my computer, or you may find me looking at some cool fractal surface under the microscope, or I could be putting my work boots on and going and seeing, something on site.
Yeah, I always say there's three types, or three, I guess, main areas of an engineer's workday. There's the on-site part of it. There's the technical part of it, which might include analysis, or you're in a lab or whatever have you. And then there's the third piece, which is people and communication. And
Yes.
that's it that I really enjoy. I think you're more technical, Danielle, whereas you might find the calls and things like that maybe more boring. For me, that's the best part. I love making presentations and communicating with people. I find the technical stuff a little bit stressful for me. So the people side of engineering is where I really enjoy communicating with people. So all three of those pillars are, I guess, three different types of engineers. There could be more hands-on, there could be someone who's more technical, and there could be someone who's more people or client or vendor facing. So if you fall into one of those three categories, generally that's where a lot of engineers find themselves across different industries. So I guess, Danielle, you said a lot of the times you might find yourself on site. I do know Sophie works 100% virtual. She's always worked from home. So Sophie, how does Danielle's workday contrast with yours?
Yeah, it's very different because I don't leave my room. Most of my day, because I'm remote work, I would say a large portion of the day is spent in meetings because all of our calls that we have internally, we have our touch points with different team members. We have our client calls. So I would say a good 30 to 40% of my day is usually just spent in meetings. And you have to get, I think, when you're in remote, you do get used to that because that's your only source of interaction with your teams. And we have a lot of communication on applications like Slack because we're constantly messaging back and forth when we're working on projects. It's still very collaborative, it's just all virtual. Um, and then another portion of my day is spent doing the actual technical side of things. So for me, that includes coding. I'll spend a few hours of my day just head down and writing, scripts, transforming data from one to another. So that is a little bit more of isolated work. And then we'll spend probably the last portion of it again communicating back with clients, working on whatever is going on with their systems. But all of it is handled virtual. So it is really different. There's no on site work. Um, you still have a lot of interactions with people. Everything is just done through meetings like this.
Yeah, I think the traditional idea of what an engineer was just typical dude in a hard hat on site. And I think that part of what we're doing today is trying to change your guys' idea of what a typical engineer looks like, because there's really no such thing. We come in all shapes and sizes and colors. Some of us work from home, some of us work on site, some of us are in a lab, some of us are busy talking to customers all day. And so I think there's a place for everyone, whether you're an extrovert and you love chatting with people, or whether you're an introvert and you like to be in a lab all day. I don't think there's any sort of typical workday for an engineer. And that's really great because there's something for everyone, especially in light of the global pandemic. A lot of people's day-to-day commutes have been shortened because they work from home. So there really is something for everyone. And I wanted to kind of transition that into my next question of work-life balance. I know that there's different career expectations for people in different industries. Some people have a very good work-life balance and some people don't. So I wanted to kind of understand from your guys' perspective, your work-life balance. So Waika, if you wanted to start off that one.
Sure. So outside of work and school, I am a competitive paddler in Dragon Boat and Outrigger Canoe. I coach the Engineering University of Toronto Dragon Boat team, and I guess Outrigger Canoe now. So it takes up a lot of my time. I'd say, especially in the summer, if I'm not working or at school, I'm on the water, and I love it. It's what I think makes me more productive at work, knowing I have that free time to do what it is that I love. And so for me, work-life balance has been a huge lesson in the last 3 years. I think I can always take on more than what I can actually do, hence my superpower being to manipulate time. but it's been worth it. I find work-life balance gets easier when you're driven and pushed by things you love. So for me, like getting up early to go to paddle, or staying out late on the water to coach or do competitions, for me is worth it. Like I can do that on top of what I have to do because I really love it. There's a drive for me to keep pushing outside of work and school. In terms of work life, I think in high school you're just in school. Some people are doing part-time jobs maybe, but once your work life becomes full time, I think what really helps work life balance is actually a really understanding, I guess work community, or like whoever your colleagues are, their understanding of your schedule, right? We have so many things to do. I'm sure the other ladies on the panel too. And as you develop in your academics and as you go forward in your careers from high school till now, you're going to find that it is a challenge. You do have to prioritize things. But for me, it's my compass is like always what I like to do. What I find is part of my identity. It makes everything easier. You're going to be tired. It's never going to be perfect. And you're always sometimes being like, okay, I have to do this. I have to do that. But if you're really driven by the things that you do, going to school, I have to drive sometimes twice a week to McMaster. That's worth it. Like, no way I could convince myself not to and skip class and all that. But I love the concept that I'm learning, so I'm gonna go make that drive an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes to McMaster. I love paddling, so I'm gonna do that. And then I enjoy the work that I do, so I'm gonna also try and make sure that I'm productive at work. So for me, that's the compass that I really go by to have work-life balance.
Yeah, I think the one thing that a lot of engineers have in common is that they're very driven individuals, as we can see from Waika's busy schedule. And very driven individuals often have a lot to balance. And it's definitely manageable. And as we can see, women are truly superheroes. So women engineers are just one notch up there. So Peggy, I wanted to ask you, in addition to your work, and obviously your work-life balance, how do you find balancing a family as well as balancing your career? So on camera.
Yeah. It gets easier, I think, as you gain more seniority to be practical about that aspect. It was hard because in our male-dominated environments, it's still fairly heterocentric, male-centric, and so the men typically have families, but they have either a stay-at-home partner, a wife, typically, or just the expectation is that the wife will take a lot of it. I'm very fortunate in that case as well. My wife is. She was a consultant, so she was much more flexible with her time, and it worked very well for us, especially when this awesome kid came along. But it does get easier over time, and I am at the place in my career where I can draw the lines a little bit more and delegate more. But in return, I also give a lot. So like I'm dealing with teams in Israel, in China, and I'm up either at like 4, 5, 6 in the morning, and I might be talking to someone at 11 at night. But in return, my manager is extremely understanding. I'm entirely virtual, even though there's like a policy to go back to work just because of the nature of the work I do. But I think at the beginning, I think this role moving into architecture, I did feel a bit of pressure to give up a bit of that. And so before I took this promotion, my wife and I had a sit down, and I asked her if it was okay, because I know that it was going to eat into our family time a little bit. So it's there's a lot of negotiating and whatnot. And for when I started up architecture, so it involved coordinating or designing things from big picture to down to feature levels, and you can go up and down, and there was a lot of pressure to ramp up very quickly. So I did lose quite a bit, and at times it comes in spurts. But my wife is extremely, she's incredible. She's amazing, and our wonderful family, she's like the glue. So it's I'm very fortunate.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add one thing that I heard once at a seminar. They said that the most important decision you make in your life, or in your career really, is your partner. I think it helps a lot when you have support at home, whether it's your partner or for the high school students on the call today, your parents, your friends, whoever your support system is. I think being a driven engineer with a lot of things on your plate, support is always the main part of your work-life balance. No one can do it alone, so it's very nice and warm-hearted to hear that you guys all have some sort of system, whether it's through exercise or family, or taking care of yourself and your mental health, however way that manifests. It's great to hear that you guys all have some sort of form of that. And then my final question for today's event would be, if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice when you were just starting out in your engineering undergraduate careers, or even at your first job, who knows? What would be that one critical piece of advice that you would give yourself? So I'd like each of you to give one piece of advice to the panel today. Sophie, would you like to start us off?
Sure. So I think the first thing that came to mind when you asked that was that for me, once I was in grade 12, I kind of just decided, I did a lot of research and I was like, okay, I'm going to do biomedical engineering, and I stuck to it. And I was very tunnel vision with it. And so looking back and seeing the way that my career evolved, and the way I got into software later, I wish I would have gone back and just been a little bit more open-minded about exploring other disciplines and being okay to even switch disciplines. I thought, once I had started into one program, that I should stick through it all the way, and that would be better. But I think I would have told myself that it's okay to be a little bit more curious about other disciplines and to do a little bit more research on what it looks like after I graduate. Actually doing the research on careers, whether those careers that I'm actually interested in just need a bachelor's degree, or if I'd have to go and do a master's in order to really get to where I want to be. Asking those questions about the actual careers that I want to work in, and then not being afraid to pivot early on if I needed to.
I think being able to pivot is going to be a strong, perhaps, point in all of our pieces of advice. I would agree the same. Like, don't be scared to take a step back. Don't be scared to change your mind. Don't be scared to fail. You're not going to be good at things the first time you do something. And if you have a strong support system, whether that be guidance counselors, friends, family, whatever, I think that's a very important skill to learn when you're young in your career, learning how to fail and how to pick yourself back up, because you're going to fail at some point in time. It's how you get back up that really defines you. So yeah, I like what you said, Sophie. I really do agree. Danielle, did you have something that you wanted to share with the panel as well?
Of course. My big thing, and that I'm still working on this today, is to not be afraid to ask questions. Even if you're in high school and you're having trouble in your math class, like, don't be afraid to go to the math extra help or physics extra help or chemistry extra help, or ask your teacher, can I see you at lunch and ask you this question? I'm really struggling with this concept. Take that into university, use your professors, use the teaching assistants, like, they're there to help you. And if you're not understanding something, it's good to ask once you try to figure it out on your own a little bit, but then just to ask for help. And to not be afraid to ask for help and to ask for those questions. I still find myself doing this in my day-to-day work, because I like to say no two things break exactly the same way. And there's sometimes where I see new things at work all the time. So I go and ask my manager, who has 15 years experience in this field. It's like, hey, I haven't seen this before. Like, can you help walk me through it? Or I think this is what happened, but can I talk to you about it? And, asking those questions to help better my understanding, because it's the problem of you don't know what you don't know, and to not be afraid to ask those questions. I find, particularly in engineering, we find, we're really good at math, we're really good at science, so we like to think that we know almost everything that there is to know. But I think it's a humbling experience to be able to ask those questions, and to be able to get the help that you need to help you succeed. And I think those are, something that I learned more in high school and then in university, but even I take that into my career, just learning from my peers and learning from my mentors, and not to be afraid to be like, I actually haven't seen this before. Can you help walk me through it? And then you learn, and then hopefully you can be able to give back to others in that way, same way. So people come to you and ask you questions. You're like, oh yeah, I know how to solve this math question. I figured it out last week. Here, let me help you sort it out. So I think that's something that I had maybe wish I had done more, and not to be afraid to ask those questions, not to be afraid to say, I actually don't know, what's going on.
Humility is definitely
Mhm.
huge. Sure. Waika, did you want to add any pieces of advice?
Yep, I think we're all touching on the same points. For me personally, I think I would have given 18-year-old Waika just like the reassurance of it's okay to deviate. It's okay to be an anomaly. Anyone can take that, like everyone can take that in their own way. But for me, I felt a social obligation or a familial obligation to be something. I'm gonna finish my degree in this much. I want to stick with my friends. I'm afraid, like, especially now with the high school students, a lot of your life right now is with your peers, and it's going to be with your peers even as you go into first year. But from first year to fourth year, everyone's taking their own path, and you're going to have to be okay sometimes with feeling like, okay, maybe I'm the only one out of everyone that I know that's going to go on this path. As women, we already kind of feel that way in terms of I may be the only woman in the room, I may be the only woman in my program. But yeah, for me, I wish I wasn't so afraid to be like, yeah, like I really don't like what other people like. I like this stuff, and I wish I kind of just went more forward of like, this is who I think I am. This is what I want to do, instead of I feel like my parents want me to do this, or I feel like my friends are going to judge me if I, like deviate from the timeline that I think we grow up being raised of like, there's a timeline, especially for women. There's a timeline. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to get there in this amount of time. And I think for me now, it's like, that's fine. Like I'm not going to be accomplishing that timeline. Whoever in this world was like ordaining that on me, I'm like, no, it's okay. Like I'm going to deviate, and I think that has made me happier. So yeah, I think that'd be my advice to 18-year-old Leica.
Yeah, and I think university is the perfect place to do that because in contrast to high school, there is like hundreds of groups on campuses for everyone, whether it be a sports team or a diversity and inclusion group or some sort of club that's very niche. I think even U of T even has like a Quidditch team for Harry Potter fans. So, and there's opportunities to make your own clubs if the club doesn't exist. So I think university is the perfect place to find yourself if you have the confidence in yourself to just be who you are. And I 100% agree with that, Waika. That's a great piece of advice. And Peggy, if you wanted to add your advice as well, we'd really appreciate it.
Really appreciate it. I agree with so much of what everybody before me said. I tried to get my son to say this, but what do we say when we're most scared?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm focused.
Okay. We tell each other that when we're most scared, that's the time to be brave. You can only really be brave if you're scared, because if you're not scared, you're not being brave. So it's okay to be scared. It's okay to not know what you're doing. It's okay to not feel like you're swimming the same way as everybody else, and it works out. And I know this sounds so corny and so cheesy, but you have to believe in yourself too. Like you understand your own environment better. I was never really good in school. Yes, I made it into a master's. So yes, it wasn't too bad, but it was a heck of a lot easier than it could have been. Because I found out much later after that I do have ADHD, and nobody at that time understood that. So, and I always knew I was a little bit different. But it's like no matter how much work I put in, I didn't connect because I wasn't out at that time. So there was like I didn't even really, I wasn't even out to myself because I'm from a very fairly traditional upbringing. And so as a woman in engineering, already surrounded by men in mechanical mechatronics engineering, it was a difficult time. So university wasn't great, but I just followed what I liked to do. And yeah, it didn't seem like it had a good plan. Yeah, I floated around mechatronics, I floated around materials, and then I did this and I did that. And it all worked out. Like it's all useful information. And now I'm architecture, which is very suitable for someone with ADHD because you get to go everywhere and explore everything, and you bring everything into the same spot. And this is the happiest I've been with my career, and I feel like I finally, quote unquote, made it. So it's just that belief in yourself, and what Sophie and Waika and Danielle said, like, don't be afraid to ask questions, be yourself. It sounds so cheesy, but it's so true. It's so true.
I think things are cheaper. I think things will work out if you just keep going forward, believe in yourself, have a strong support system, and just be in the right place at the right time, be true to who you are, and things will always work out. So trust us with a little bit of our hindsight and our 2020 vision as we try to give you guys some sort of advice or feedback from our careers. But panelists, thank you so much for all of your feedback today. I wanted to give the group an let me go back one slide. I want to give the opportunity to any individuals on the Zoom link right now to ask any questions to the panelists. I know we're running out of time, but we can definitely take a couple of questions. If anyone has a question, feel free to speak up. Or if you're not comfortable speaking up, you can always send us an email after the meeting and we can respond as well. So does anyone have any questions? You can feel free to unmute yourself. Going once. Going twice. And sold. Okay. If anyone has any questions, feel free to hit us up. I'll throw up the QR link in a second here. But just a few closing remarks as we wind down from our session today. I just wanted to really thank our speakers and sponsors today from General Motors Canada, 30 Forensics Engineering, MIPE Quality Solutions, as well as Virtual Health for being part of the conversation and kind of driving us forward to make sure that the future generation of engineers is more diverse and more inclusive for sure. So Revolution is always looking to have more volunteers, have more registrants, and just get more of our community involved, whether you're coming from an engineering background or just STEM in general. Feel free to be a part of us. I will throw up the QR link in a moment. So thank you to our partners, Lakehead University, all of our champion partners, as well as our ally partners. So and our advocate partners. Sorry, I almost glanced over them. So thank you guys all for coming out today and being part of our event. I think we had a very great discussion, lots of different perspectives and feedback that you guys all got today. So the QR code on the screen will take you to our website, revolution.org. So feel free to get involved. This session was recorded and will be posted again on our YouTube channel, hopefully this time in April. So if you guys want to come back, see who the speakers were, get their names or their information, I can see if they'd like to connect with you guys, if they want to ask more questions. But thank you all again on behalf of Revolution and myself. I think this was a great discussion and I'm very happy to have been a part of it. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate it and enjoy the rest of your days. Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Anya. You're moderating.